Hi, my name is Dong and I'm an animator based in Japan. I've been feeling nostalgic recently while archiving my old work on Decadence, and I thought today let's go through some of my work on that anime. Spoilers ahead, so watch out. Decadence was the first anime I was fully on. I did work for various shows and games before, of course, but that was only a couple of cuts here and there. I actually did a bunch of work for pachinko games, and these are the things that play on top of the slot machines, and if you want to see the rest of the anime, you gotta keep winning at slots. Crazy stuff, but as a quick tip, if you are an animator and you work mainly on pachinko games, you will actually make much more money than your peers that work on TV, and can be a good way to make a good living with animation here in Japan. For Decadence, I was there from the beginning to the end, and I probably learned the most in my career in the year of production that was spent on that show. Being in close proximity to skilled animators and having a mentor is probably the best way to improve, and if you can get into a similar situation, I recommend it 100%. Production started in 2019, and I started my Japanese animation career a couple months ago at Studio Nut. At the time I joined, pretty much all the animators were ex-Madhouse, as Nut was created from the exodus of artists from Madhouse. Director Tachikawa was the one helming the show. Director Tachikawa wanted to make an original anime after wrapping up on Mob Psycho, and he pretty much wrote the whole script for Decadence while he was at Bones working on Mob Psycho. Director Tachikawa was also my mentor on Decadence, and with his help, I probably learned the most about animation during the year or so of the production of the show. I remember during pre-production, the team would be talking about how the show works and the story, and it was pretty crazy. There was this robot world and the human world, and the robots would treat the human world as a game almost. It flew over my head the first time it was described to me, and it wasn't until I got my hands on the storyboards that the story did eventually make sense to me. I think director Tachikawa really likes these type of stories with multiple layers of depths. The first couple of cuts I had assigned to me were those in episode 2. In this episode, we are in the robot world. The robots all kind of had a Western cartoon style, and with me and my Western animation background, I felt it was a good fit for me. My assigned cuts weren't particularly difficult, but with me being relatively new, it allowed me to ease into anime production. This is cut 93. Here we have a bunch of the robots lining up to get their oxone, their food essentially, and it's a standard crowd scene, and drawing the layout here gave me a good practice for perspective drawings. Drawing the robot guys were also pretty fun. Most of them were just an egg shape with details, and that was mainly how I approached drawing them. In cut 98 here, I tried to do some simple character acting. Decadence was interesting where the voices weren't recorded in time for animation, so I had to time out the lines by acting them out myself and using a stopwatch to figure out how long the timing is for a piece of dialogue. I think I had an old video on this a couple years ago when I first started my YouTube channel, and director Tachikawa taught me this technique. The studio also had these huge floor-to-ceiling mirrors, and you can use those to help shoot reference, which I often did. And it is something I will often recommend to newer animators. The next episode I worked on was episode 3. I got to work more with human characters in this one. I was still pretty bad at drawing humans at this time, and here in cut 79 you can see I drew Faye pretty bad in the rough animation, rough layout stage. I still couldn't get a hang of difficult angles where the head is tilted up or down, but with the assistance of the animation Sakuga directors, they helped me a lot when putting the characters on model. I wasn't a particularly strong artist at this point, and most newer animators that join the studio systems aren't, but the drive to learn is everything in this industry in my opinion. Here is cut 85. I try to draw digital when I can, even though I was primarily animating on paper at this point. I really like drawing on paper. There is a warmth to the line that you often cannot get with digital. I have a video talking about the merits of paper animation on this channel. I also think this was when COVID-19 was going on, and whenever someone was sick, we would all work from home. And animating on paper while remote was just really a huge pain. Getting Natsume's expression down and getting that nuance in there was a big challenge for me. I remember director Tachikawa giving me a big lecture on nuance and how very small changes in line work that make up the eyes especially can greatly change what a character is feeling. And I think something like that you really only learn with experience. After that was episode 4. I got put in charge of the intro sequence, which I thought felt like a huge responsibility. This is cut 1, and here Natsume runs past camera looking for her pet. This cut was pretty difficult. Not only was there movement dynamics you have to think about, there was character acting as well as she frantically looks around. She also runs in perspective, so your technical ability also has to be on point. I had a lot of help on this one, and even looking at my Genga, there were a lot of drawovers provided by the Sakuga director. There was also a 3D CG car in this cut, and it was my first time dealing with 3D objects. Here I essentially just roughed out the animation of the car driving by, and the 3D animator used that to time out that car. Here is cut 2. Here's the cycle of Natsume running as she looks side to side. This cut was also way more complicated than it looks. The run is both a cycle and also not a cycle. The animation on the body cycles after a couple drawings, but the head had to be animated separately as she turns her head screen left and right. She also has dialogue here, so I pretty much had to create mouth flap for her for every frame of that run. The BG also moves in a 3D way called a paspiki or perspective follow. Overall, it was pretty complicated and it went over my head the first time I tried to animate this. Thankfully, director Tachikawa showed me the ropes and told me how to compartmentalize and deal with all the different elements of the cut in a simpler way. A tip when dealing with something complicated is to try and split everything into manageable chunks. And this applies to many things other than just art. The next episode I was on was episode 6. This is an episode set in the robot world. Here is cut 78. There were a lot of crowd scenes in this episode, and not really all of the robots were actually designed. There were maybe like 10 different designs for the mob robots in total. I had to fill in the mob robot characters with my own design so that they didn't repeat too much. There are actually some Easter eggs in this scene. Here's that meme of Chris Pratt in Jurassic World with the raptors. And oh yeah, here's a bender. Here's cut 301 of episode 6. I actually animated about a fifth of this episode. I think there were almost like 400 cuts in total for episode 6. Anyways, here's that henchman guy, I forgot his name, running towards robot Kaburagi. In the video, you can actually see the rough animation, and here I saved the frames from the Genga. I think animating these action cuts are really fun. Action cuts with a lot of drawings are both more and less technical in different places. A lot of foreign freelancers that work in anime really like action cuts because they don't have to deal with the scholastic parts of animation such as filling in a timesheet and writing in camera work, and it often becomes a game of pure technical ability. The best way to improve in action animation is to study life and see how people actually move. There was also an episode 6.5 that I worked on. It was a partial recap episode, but with parts animated for it. I don't think anyone remembers this episode, and I had forgotten about it until I started working on this video. I also helped out with other episodes, but mainly with helping out the animators finish their Genga. The next full episode I was on was episode 11. Here I was able to further practice action animation and work on my technical drawing abilities. Here is cut 27, and we have Natsume going in for an attack on the main, quote, villain. This cut uses a camera move called the skip pan or tracking pan, where only the BG layer actually moves, and the animation cell layers are held in terms of camera work. Trying to get these poses working was also a challenge, and again, director Tachikawa really helped me get this right. I remember I would draw something, and he would pretty much do a complete full rough draw over, and I would fix my drawing based on his drawing, and that would repeat. I did learn a lot though. This is the next cut, cut 28. Here we have Natsume doing some fighting moves. I'm a big Street Fighter fan, and at the beginning, I drew her doing a Shoryuken. Director Tachikawa also helped me out with a lot of the posing as well. I think drawing B5.5 here was added by him, and it looks really cool at bridging that movement. For B10, he redrew my original drawing to have the knee lead the kick and have the feet lag behind. This makes the impact feel much more intense. I think it was interesting to just see how much knowledge my coworkers had. They can see things wrong with my animation at a moment's glance that I don't notice myself. It's always great to have extra eyes around you to look at your work. Then, finally, I was on episode 12. I work on a variety of cuts with both Natsume and the robot guys. This is cut 102, and this was pretty fun to work on, and it consists of a bunch of the robot guys cheering Natsume on. Each character here had their own layer, and it was a lot of drawings to get everyone animated and moving. I really liked the movie Redline, and in that movie, the crowds are always moving and look so lively, and I wanted to get that feeling in here as well. After that, I was pretty much done, and I went on vacation for a couple of weeks. The other animators also took a break, as it is customary to do so after finishing on a show. The cleanup were Doga crew, and the rest of the post-production team were also working hard on it. I believe when I finished up on episode 12, episode 8 or so was already airing, so the team had to hurry up and keep the production on schedule. Well, that was a bunch of cuts I worked on during the production of Decadence, and I think that anime turned out pretty well. It actually beat the other big anime of the season in rankings, Great Pretenders I think it was called, here in Japan. There was a lot of great work that went into this, and if you haven't seen it already, I recommend you do so. Alright, thanks guys, especially the Patreon and YouTube members. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can help out the channel at the link below, and members get extra content every month. Other than that, check out my socials, and I'll see you when I see you.